Make we talk about guilt and remorse. In the early stages of our self development, one of the first things where we do work on now our confidence. And to get to this place, where we get more confidence, to find that confidence inside of ourselves, we had to abandon a lot of popular concepts. So popular concepts popular concepts about the right way to talk, for example, you know, even little things like how you dey waka sef, how you dey position yourself, you know, how you dey manage your relationships, how you dey behave as a person to find yourself in that beginning stages. You had to, you know, abandon these things to some extent, put them to the side because now you won't learn to love the way you dey behave. You won't learn to accept yourself with your flaws, with your imperfections. That's not pretty much how the majority of us learn to find ourselves, you know, in relation to our self confidence. Now, how we learn to gain that confidence and getting to that place, they allow us to show up in the world with way more audacity, you know, when they constantly they look yourself, oh, shey I dey speak correctly, shey I dey waka correctly, shey I dey act correctly, constantly observing yourself. And then you can't grow up to a certain age to realize, hey man, you're not really need to the overdo like that, Everybody gets their own flaws and imperfections. So you learn to accept them, and are there a very big chunk of your self confidence come from. And from that moment, you begin to find the strength to be yourself, right? But in that change, in that learning, in that growing, there is something that happens prior to this lesson, prior to this growth, this you know gaining of your self confidence. Wetin be dey happen to you prior? And I say, whenever somebody else suggests to you, say the way you dey behave, no dey okay, you dey usually feel this small guilt inside. It's guilt, is shame, right? The way I take do this thing not make sense. Maybe they never even check yourself. Maybe nobody don't ask you questions yet. Only you don't dey ask yourself question. You should say I do this thing where so, you should say I do that thing where so. You should say I dey waka the way I suppose to waka. Will I be respected in this if I dey waka like this? Yeah, I go. So you get this small guilt where they did there. And learning to accept yourself meant throwing all these things to the side, abandoning that guilt, that's constantly questioning yourself. It meant putting those things to the side and moving beyond them. Waiting I go like talk about for this particular conversation about guilt now, the way sometimes, especially in that beginning stage, once you just find this confidence, realize hey, you actually feel just do a lot of the things where you did do where they come natural, where they come naturally to you, and it's actually fine. There is a kind of dismissal that becomes a part of our being. There is this silent or subtle dismissive tendency where we dey get in that moment, especially when we are new to it. It's sort of where we find the strength to exist as ourselves, to show up in the world as ourselves with strength and audacity, like I said earlier. Now there we dey pull strength from. to fit be ourselves for the world. And I did quite concerned about how sometimes we dey live too long for this phase, right? This phase where we still dey very dismissive about anything will not be our own way of behaving. This phase when we still dey very protective of ourselves, you know, you are kind of new to the world. This real you, this complete you, this authentic you is new to the world. It's like you dey test the waters. You test them and some people accept you and you're like, so I could have been this free the whole time, but because it's still new, you still dey feel this need to defend that stance all the time. Somebody comes and say, oh, they work away, or they talk where this is not how to talk. And then you feel the need to be so defensive about it, and you tell the person a million words to try and convince the person that you are doing you are doing it the right way, or maybe not even try to convince the person that you are doing it the right way. Just let the person know that there is no rule for how to get things done, you know and I guess that's fine. It's kind of what we need in the beginning stages to help protect this self. I don't want to say image of ourselves, because if we say image, it could be like say we dey try curate something. But na sort of wetin we need to protect ourselves. This will be like newborn, where just they launch ourselves, like like soft launch. Like we dey launch ourselves into the world, they tell the world, say, see how I really take deal. All those things that they do since, not just because say confidence, no dynamic at the behave like that since. So this is not who I really be. So I guess in the beginning we needed that strength, however chaotic it may have been. I guess we needed that in the moment to protect ourselves, you know. But I think why they talk this thing, I think why I decided to speak on guilt and remorse now, because of how I feel like say they use that dismissive tendency, or should I say that strength, we they use them beyond the phase where we suppose take use them. So now something where we need to take protect us in the beginning, right? When we find ourselves. But ideally after a while, we suppose drop them, you know, suppose get to a place where we don't really need to defend our stance all the time. I feel like ideally we want to get to a place where 50 people if you face you, they tell you say what you they do not right. And as long as you don't check yourself, you check you see say you not really they affect another person life negatively. You go fit stand there quietly and let everybody air their view. It's cool, bruh. According to my mom, see, she go say I'm mad the person they talk now. You know, enjoy you, Abby. I feel like eventually we want to get to that place where we not really need to defend our stance or our worldview all the time for us to get the strength to take continue to live that way, you know, because I dey see they manifest in interpersonal relationships, sometimes in ways where it be like say they really destroy relationships, you know, where because you still there in defense mode to some degree, it dey a bit difficult for you to see the ways where you take the falter, so when you did wrong sometimes, which is inevitable, when they handle a situation properly, sometimes it's difficult for you to see it because you don't use this dismissive behavior you know, a lot in the beginning of your launching. You don't use them a lot. You don't forget, say, man, this thing is something when I suppose just use to survive for a while and then drop them. But you carry them past that phase, you carry them way beyond that beginning phases, So now you just be this dismissive person. The person tell you, say you do something wrong, but at the point, you know, to something where you do, say make you observe them, say make you check them. Rather than checking, your initial response now to dismiss them because you believe, say, the expression of that kind of proves that you are confident. Don't know. I don't feel like I'm even hitting the exact trigger or the exact driver for people who would sometimes act that way. When they act that way, I don't feel like I'd even hit the driver exactly what drives it. But I think I'm close. I think I'm very close to it. So we carry this need to protect ourselves far beyond the phase where we suppose carry and reach. Make I just give example. Maybe example will make them really easier to understand. So take a scenario between two friends. I think this one is very common. Most of us will be able to relate to it. I not look camera away for this one. I think most of us will be able to relate to it. Think of a scenario between two friends and maybe even random people say they're not that close. But both of them they get exchange back and forth, normal conversation, nothing heated. And then one gets back to the other one to say, the way you take position this matter, the way you take position that matter, or the way you take follow me reason, and not to like and then the other person, rather than taking the time to replay the conversation, try think about them objectively, their response nah could be to the person directly or to themselves. When the person know they just say, this person is too sensitive. How you go say now this thing when I talk, now me you the best. Or now this thing when I talk, now like, you know, you're just too sensitive. Or another one that is very, very common, even more common. Even you said if you don't do I believe they get time for my life when I did talk am to, I believe say you don't hear somebody talk before say, man, me, I'm just brutally honest, sha. I'm just blunt. And I guess a lot of people know if you handle that kind of brutal honesty. You know, we say these things to ourselves. And after I make that change for my life, one of the things when I tell people when I talk about them now, I get the fact that you want to be as honest to people as you can be. But ultimately, I believe say the purpose behind that honesty, the reason why you want to be honest to people is so that you can help them, right? So that you can help them make positive changes in their life and ultimately become a better person. That's why you're trying to be honest. But what if your honesty at the time, if it is delivered with such brutality, what if it is going to break the person completely and not break the person in the sense that, oh, when you're going to build something beautiful, you first have to break things down. Not in that sense, like break it down to a degree where the person cannot come back from. I usually say, what if the person go off themselves just because they could not handle the, the degree with which you say blow the issue. You say blow the issue up, or the degree to which you carry the issue. What if the person of your handle am? Everybody gets different levels of elasticity, where they feel stretch reach. So what if the person of your handle am? And then they go house, they off themselves, or they go house and they just sink enter this very depressive state where last for months or maybe years. Who have you helped? The intention originally was to help this person become a better human being, make positive changes. But now this person is degrading into maybe self-destructive behaviors, or like I said, maybe they just off themselves. If you check the matter, you go see say the majority of the time when we they employ this brutal honesty, when we they employ this bluntness, it's not, if you really check yourself in those times, you'll see say it's not really about the person. You are not trying to serve that person. You're not trying to look out for that person in that moment where you take flare up. You are not actually catering to that person. You were catering to yourself. You were satisfying something inside yourself. It could be the ego inside of you that says, I know something that this person does not know in the moment, and you are reveling in that feeling in the moment. Now that thing inside of you, now you dissatisfied, not the desire to help this person, to support this person, to cater to this person, you know. So uh I don't carry the matter go far, but I really bring up this issue to say when we gain our self-confidence, make we remember to push beyond that phase to get to a place where we no longer need to be so overly protective of ourselves in terms of our self-confidence. Say you get the way person could talk to you. If you allow a lot of those things get inside of you, it could break your self-confidence. I'm saying when you gain your self-confidence, try learn how to push them. Try do the work to push them beyond that first level to get to a place where you don't need that much defending anymore. You know, try get them to a place where it's no longer built on just the ideas of I'm a human being and I deserve to exist first. Just because I'm a human being, I deserve to exist. I deserve to talk the way I talk. I deserve to walk the way I walk. I deserve to behave the way I behave, right? Try to do the work to move past that first phase and get to a place where constant defense of that confidence is no longer necessary. You know, you can show up with confidence without having to be loud about it as a way to show that you have it. You know, if you feel like in your interaction with people, your self confidence or your expression of your embodiment of they constantly reduce people, not because the person, they, how do they call them, when somebody they dump their own insecurities on you, not because the person they dump their own insecurities on you. Like genuinely, when it happen, your mind will tell you. If you feel like say your own embodiment of your self confidence, they constantly tear other people down, then it may be time to slow down and look at yourself objectively in the mirror. You know, you go feel exist fully in your power without necessarily having to tear the other person down. And you go even you go feel like say you don't pity the person, but it's not really pity. It's just when you see a person when they where they are, it becomes it becomes low-key wrong inside your body somehow. If you keep trying to bash and bash and bash, yes, if they did a certain kind of work, therefore don't reach a certain kind of place, and you would not, you know, need to slow down or watch the way that you speak. But I I appreciate fact say a very big part of our self work, you know, those where be like say they get around actually doing that work. And they appreciate the fact say a big part of that is circumstantial. That is, it was not 100% in our hands. Those developments, those growths, those learning, you know, being exposed to the possibility of learning and developing yourself in those ways, it was not 100% in your hands. A good chunk of it was circumstantial, you know, being lucky enough to be in the same space with a certain person. And because you met a certain person, you were exposed to maybe a certain movie, or you were exposed to maybe a certain book, you know, or a certain concept or a certain idea. And after you heard about it, you became curious. You went home, you did some research, and then you learned and you learned and you learned. You know, if I did look at them, I did wonder what about those who are not they exposed to the exact information where they exposed to. Because a person could be working on themselves in a different area while you are working on yourself in this area. You know, if you come meet the person don't know what you know, does it necessarily mean that the person is just lazy? So I guess not there my own understanding they come from. I guess now where they try to cater to the other person. Now I think I dey speak right now for times when we say you actually did right. You know, because sometimes people will point out something where you do, and after thorough investigation, you would find and they would find that you were actually right. You know, but I'm suggesting here that even in such times, you try your hardest for your delivery to be as kind as possible. You know, because you could have something very helpful to say to that person, but if your delivery no dey, should I say, reasonable, you know, in relation to the person, if it's not presented in a way that this person can understand, not to understand as in understand the meaning of the words, but understand, receive, and actually hear the intention behind which you dey talk. The intention being, I'm trying to help. The intention being, this is what I'm thinking you should try to work on. If you don't fit deliver am in a way we go help the person to understand it a bit more easily, then I guess we get some blame to take too. I'm probably over analyzing it, tying to how circumstantial self development in itself is too, you know. But I guess this is the beauty of life, where because of our different experiences, we are able to see from different perspectives. And now why are they feel they stretch the matter, they go all this place, they overthink they begin they feel concern for another person, even in a time or in a situation where I should be trying to protect myself. You know, but man, I feel like I don't stray too much for this conversation. So make I bring us back. I think there is something about this conversation that really connects deeply with me because I noticed I don't look the cameras where we for this conversation. I just they lost just really the talk from here more than from waiting I be done prepare. And I actually like them more than the overly structured ones. But yeah, the conversation I think this is the second time I talk this thing. The conversation once you gain your self confidence, try not to throw away the the key and the door and feel like, okay, that is done. You know, still retain your ability to look at your actions and your behaviors objectively with the possibility that sometimes your behaviors could be wrong. You know, if there is someone is suggesting that the way you delivered something, the way you handled something was wrong, don't be too quick to defend yourself as a way to protect your pride or your ego. You know, don't be too quick to defend yourself as a way to show that you have self-confidence. You know, that you're confident, that you're a confident person. Don't be too quick to do that. You know, confidence can be quiet too. Someone can be shouting and I will sit here and I just keep quiet. That's confidence too. So it gets different expressions. Don't feel like, you know, you always have to, you know, raise your voice and make sure your voice is loudest. Don't succumb to that way of thinking or that school of thought. But yeah, that not the matter. I go pause for a. I feel like we don't cover everything, so I go leave am here. My name now starts and I go see you for the next video.